Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the channel. Joey Only Caribou Weather Dude YouTube up here in Wells, BC, 3,953 feet above sea level. Shoveled my car to the snowbank today. The warm weather got up to like 15 degrees almost here in Wells. The warm weather made the snow nice and soft at some point. It was easier and easier as I got into it to get this car out of the snowbank. So got the car going again. Yes, that's it. Hit like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend. Joey Only Caribou Weather Dude YouTube channel. Juna is posting here on Interior Weather and Wilderness Watchers how we had very warm temperatures in BC today, and that's why I'm talking about the spring dip. That's the fire season. Before the fire season, we sometimes get in the spring when things are dried out. That's not the only effect that spring can have on wildfire season. It can have others as well. Let's talk about that right now. There it is. This is bad news. My God.
Fall out right now.
Anything could happen.
Get on! Wow.
I'll watch the video later. They dry mop in this. Okay, hitting up to 23.1 degrees in Lytton today. It looks like I think we surpassed our expectations today. In fact, it looks like even Ryan Voutilainen got proven correct. Abbotsford even hitting 20, so somewhere down the lower mainland did get a 20 today. Delta 21.2. There you go. So nice and warm. 21.6 at Cultus Lake. So nice and warm down that sector, and even here in the Caribou was pretty nice today. Seeing temperatures like 19, 16, 9, 17 up by Prince George. Very warm, very unusually warm for April the 5th. Warm enough that we even set records. Fort Nelson hit 19.3 today. That beat the old record that was set back in 1955. They've been keeping records there since 37. That's a long time, folks. Sechelt got up to 17.7, just eclipsed their old record that was set in 1977. However, Squamish there blew by 2 degrees past their old record at 20.3, the new one today they set. West Vancouver tied their old record. Today, though, we're talking about a hidden risk that many people don't think about, and that's the spring dip. That's right, folks. Just because the snow is melting and the days are getting warmer doesn't mean that, it's too early to start thinking about wildfires. In fact, there's a period of increased wildfire risk early in the spring, and I'm here to tell you all about that today. We're looking at some videos that were taken last year, first at the Gang Ranch, and then also after that at Macleese Lake, 2 fires I was on in April of last year. Certainly, if something like that happened and our crew was called out, that would be nice for me. I could certainly use the work right now big time. All us firefighters are just waiting now for this time to come. But maybe for some of us, we'll get some work in the spring if we don't get work in May or June. So the spring dip. What is the spring dip? It's a period of time, which is the spring, when the snow is first melted and the vegetation hasn't started to green up yet. So this leaves behind like a layer of dead grass, leaves, deadfall, branches that can become highly flammable as the days warm up and conditions dry out. And if you think trees are safe, think again. From this, because what happens is conifers, they have a low foliar moisture content in the spring, so that makes them vulnerable to fire getting into the crowns, jumping from tree to tree if they can get up into there, right? So of course in the shady areas, things tend to be pretty damp in the spring, but it's the stuff that gets sun exposed that can quickly become a problem in the spring. So many people assume that spring's soggy and it's a safe time to burn without taking the extra precautions, and it's, we want to get that burning done in the spring before it's too late, but the truth is it's never exactly safe to burn without taking extra care, right? So the spring dip is a time when wildfires will spread quickly. It's essential to be vigilant and take the steps to prevent them, right? So what you can do if you're burning during the spring, you can check for fire prohibitions with local governments to make sure that burning is allowed in your area. First of all, if it's windy, don't burn it, because in the spring, that wind, we tend to have windy days. Like today was very, very windy, and there's a lot of snow here, nothing's burning, but if we were out in an open place in the Caribou and some, grass in a field got going in that wind, it could maybe move and do some damage somewhere, right? So choose the location of whatever you're burning very, very carefully. Make sure you position it away from things that are flammable, and make a wide fuel break, a fire break. Scrape down to mineral soil if you can where you are burning your stuff. That maybe that's not possible. Maybe you just have to maintain a certain area that's choose your battlegrounds. Make sure you burn in a smart, safe place, okay? Anyways, campfires and whatnot too, they need to be surrounded by rocks and all that. You know that, by a half meter by half meter. Category 2 open fires for backyard burning shouldn't be larger than 3 meters and 2 meters tall. Don't try to make your bonfires too big, because sometimes that can be enough to get chunks of things flying off and moving, especially if there's wind. Don't leave your fires unattended. Have your hand tools ready and available, and have water available. Make sure you have at least 8 liters for a campfire, and fire suppression systems, right? If you're done burning, make sure your fire's out and the ashes are cool to touch. Doesn't matter that it's the spring. Okay, but just because the spring dip is happening, there's another story to what spring can happen, what can mean as well. So if it's not just a matter of it's so dry, maybe your spring is extra wet. So the weather in the spring can have an impact on wildfire activity later on during the summer, because the amount of new vegetation growth and the amount of the existing dead vegetation during the spring affects what we call the fuel load for wildfire in the summer, right? So the fuel load is defined by the total amount of combustible material in a defined space. So you pick an area and say, okay, well, this area, what's the fuel load there? So we make a calculation. So fuel load is quantified in heat units, or its equivalent weight in wood. So, how much energy is available there is another way of looking at it, right? How much energy is available through combustion. If an area doesn't have very much substances in it, it won't produce much heat, won't produce much energy if it's burning, right? In an area with more wood, grass, or shrubs that are drier will have a greater fuel load in that way. And the fuel load increases as temperatures warm, humidity decreases, and with less precipitation. So there's the weather aspect that then determines, is that fuel load a healthy fuel load or a dangerous fuel load. So spring weather affects this fuel load. A wet spring means that more vegetation grows, and that increases the fuel load. And if it dries out eventually, at least, maybe it rains all summer long, like in 2019 and 2020 seemed to both be very, very wet. 2022 was wet for a long time, but then in August we got our typical fire season. I would say 2022 was, and 2024 were very typical wildfire seasons that you would expect in BC in some ways. Wet spring will mean that existing dead wood will stay moist longer, but once the vegetation dries out, it can become a significant fire hazard, right? So already in areas in the States, we have areas that are dried out, and they've had fires down there in different parts of the regions. We know that BC isn't much different. In fact, Alberta, though, has its worst month of fire is May, and that's again because things have just melted. Now they're getting sun exposed, they're dry. Things haven't started to grow yet, though. There isn't greenery. There's just this sort of dead, and then you have all the leaves and stuff on the ground as well that might dry out, and then suddenly you might have an early season fire potential that it tends to kick up, and then of course thunderstorms can maybe tip the balance if human caused. It doesn't. Sometimes we go through a long period in the spring, we don't get much for lightning, but then sometimes we get a lot of lightning early on. So that depends. But human caused fires tend to be in April. If we're gonna have a fire in BC, both the ones I was at last year seem to be human caused. It seems like that's the trend more and more for British Columbia. Maybe when we get to May, you start to see a few more lightning flashes. But again, lightning tends to hit the taller places in BC, not as much in the lower dry areas. So you got a tall hill. If it's in the central interior, maybe that tall hill is sun exposed and dried out. But if it's closer to the mountains here, you may find. We have a lot more lightning activity here in the mountains than they do in the interior out by Quesnel, whatever, in April, May. Nonetheless, that's the things to think about. Fire is not off the table just because it's early in the season. I hope I've helped make that point just a little bit to you, remind you to stay safe, make some precautions, do things correctly, and be smart, and be aware and be prepared. Even at this time of year, May 2023 was when we found ourselves up in the Peace, and that fire had burnt off a bunch of houses and a bunch of properties and things like that. Early May it happened. So have your to-go bags ready, especially in windy, dry conditions, if you're seeing them already in your regions, or when you start seeing them in your regions. Okay, everybody, hit like, share, subscribe. See you again. Bye now.